She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. Fragile skull, I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know, and she's got me living in a chemical.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. As you notice, I'm sure, we are in a new recording area. This is my recording booth, and it's very new, so I am going to do some interior decorating, but for now, this is what we have. This is what we have to work with, and it's much easier for me because it is a completely sound isolated booth away from everybody else in my house, so they can't hear me and I can't hear them, which is great. So I hope the sound is much better and the video quality is much better, and hopefully the lighting's even better too, because we were able to set it up in a more permanent fashion. So I'm very excited that we have this now, and it really means good things for this channel. But today we have our first coffee and crime time since Halloween started, and I'm really excited for it because this case blew my entire mind. And I was very interested and intent on learning everything I could about it so that I could share it with you. Today we are talking about the murders of Joel Guy Sr. and Lisa Guy, happily married for 31 years. On the morning of Monday, November 28th, Jennifer Whitehead, Lisa Guy's supervisor at work, called the police concerned that she had not shown up for work, and neither Lisa nor her husband Joel were answering Jennifer's many phone calls and texts. Now, see, Lisa had worked at this company since 2012, but she had recently turned in her resignation a week prior, telling Jennifer that both she and her husband were retiring, selling their house in Knoxville, Tennessee, and moving to a small town, Sigornsville, where they were buying Joel's family home. The new house was only about an hour and a half away from Knoxville and their old house, but they'd worked hard most of their lives, and they were ready to enjoy a peaceful retirement together. Lisa's last day at work was scheduled to be December 2nd, but this Monday, her coworkers had planned to take Lisa out for a lunch to say goodbye and wish her luck, and Lisa was a kind, dependable, and considerate woman. One who always called if she was running late to work, and one who would never be a no-show to a lunch in her honor with her work friends.
Yes, I have an employee that has not reported for work today, and highly unlike her. I've tried calling her home number, I've tried calling cell phone, and can't get a hold of her. What can we do about that? Can somebody go by and check on them?
Yeah, do you know her address?
I do.
What is that?
It is 11434 Golden View Lane. My name is Jennifer Whitehead, Whited.
And what company are you with?
Jacobs Engineering.
Okay, what's the employee's name?
Lisa Guy, Guy. Her husband's name is Joel, Joel.
Should he be there too? Does he live with her?
Yes, he does.
Okay.
And they do have a dog named Jake. I think he's a big baby.
Okay.
Deputy Stephen Ballard of the Knox County Sheriff's Office was first on the scene at 11434 Golden View Lane, and according to him, when he approached the residence, he noticed there were 3 vehicles in the driveway and a for sale sign in the front yard, and everything else seemed to be normal. He approached the front door, he knocked and rang the doorbell, announcing who he was and why he was there, but he received no answer. He then walked around to the side of the house and observed there was a locked gate, as well as a dog house on the other side of the gate. He whistled for the dog that he assumed lived in the dog house, but once again, he got no response. So after being at the residence for approximately 5 to 10 minutes, he concluded that everything seemed to be fine and continued on with his daily duties. Before we continue continue on with the video, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that allows you to try and test out so many perfumes from over 600 brands for a fraction of the price. Once you find a favorite, you can order it each month, or you can even mix it up and try different scents out each month. Scentbird lets you try a new authentic designer fragrance for either men or women every month for just $15. And you get a 30-day supply, so you can really give a fragrance a legitimate trial run before committing to buying the whole bottle, which, as we know, can get pretty expensive, especially if you like more than one perfume. And if you feel like you have enough fragrances to last you a while, you can skip a month without any penalties. All you have to do is browse through their site, choose the fragrance you want to test drive for the month, and it will be delivered to your door with free shipping. You can even upgrade to add an additional 2 or 3 scents to your order if you're really trying to narrow down your favorite. Scentbird partners with top brands such as Prada, Gucci, and Versace, but they also offer indie brands like Vince Camuto, Rag & Bone, and Confessions of a Rebel. These are not knockoffs, they are 100% genuine scents. If you're not sure what kind of fragrance you're looking for, you can discover new scents by taking a simple quiz on Scentbird.com. And based on the answers from this quiz, as well as your previous purchases and rated fragrances, Scentbird will send you something they think you'll love. I think using Scentbird is so much more practical than buying an entire bottle of perfume, to be honest. It allows me to switch up my fragrance without having to own more than one ginormous bottle of perfume that I'll probably never even come close to using. And the free refillable case that they send with your first order makes traveling with your favorite scents a literal breeze. No spills inside your purse or luggage, but you also have your signature scent on deck always. My signature perfume has been Clinique Happy since I was 15 years old. I mean, it's been over 20 years. That is all I've worn, but actually using Scentbird has given me the opportunity to find different scents that my 30-something self would like, as opposed to my 15-year-old self. Not to say that Clinique Happy isn't the best perfume out there. I still think it is. But there are so many other scents out there, and I want to try them all and see what works best with my body chemistry. And Clinique actually makes another perfume called Clinique Happy Heart, which I really love because it's got that same sort of citrus scent, but it's also kind of green, if that makes sense. Like, it smells fresh, like being outside. So I love it. And I think this is a male cologne, but I love Tommy Bahama Maritime. It is just, I guess, a nautical sort of scent. It's clean smelling, like you just stepped out of the shower. And I don't care if it's for men. I've been known to wear men's cologne often. If you're interested in giving Scentbird a try, and if you want your life to be easier and smell better, I'd say you should be interested. Click the link in the description box and use code HARLOWE30 for 30% off. That's just $10 for your first month. That's HARLOWE30, HARLOWE 30. And don't forget to download the Scentbird app, compatible with iOS and Android, and so convenient to use, making a very easy process even easier. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much to all of you out there who understand that sponsors are an essential part of this channel that allow me to keep bringing you content. And let's dive back into the video. So we've got Lisa Guy, who's supposed to be at work at 7 a.m. She doesn't show up. Her supervisor, who's also her friend, her work friend, gets worried, knows it's not like Lisa. Lisa's very dependable. Lisa always calls, and Lisa is considerate of other people. We have Deputy Stephen Ballard go over to the house, kind of look around. He doesn't see anything out of place. He did say during the trial that he didn't look through the front door. So there's a glass on the front door, and he didn't look through that because it was a safety issue, because you never know what's on the other side. So he was there for a very short time, said everything seemed fine, and he left. But back at Lisa's place of employment, she still had not shown up for work or called. And Jennifer Whitehead had not gotten a call from the police to let her know what they had found. So she called back, and she was informed that an officer had been there and found no reason for alarm. Jennifer respectfully asked them to check again, believing at this point that something was legitimately wrong. Deputy Stephen Ballard was called by another Knox County police officer, Detective Jeremy McCord, and they, along with 2 other police officers, returned to 11434 Golden View Lane in Knoxville, Tennessee, to perform another welfare check on its inhabitants. When they got there, they noticed that one of the neighbors' garage doors was open, so they went over to question this this neighbor and to ask if she had seen the guys that day. One of the officers was on the front porch of the guy's home while the other police officers were talking to the neighbors, and he pointed out that there seemed to be bags of groceries sitting in the foyer of the home that he could see through the door. And some of these groceries seemed to be perishables, such as ice cream and meat. Stephen Ballard and Jeremy McCord climbed over the fence into the backyard and approached the back door of the home, and it was at this point that Detective McCord noticed something odd. The doorknob from the back door was missing. There was just a hole where the doorknob should have been, and when he bent down and looked through that hole, he detected a strong chemical smell and felt intense heat coming through the doorknob hole. Working on a hunch, McCord returned to the front door to confirm his theory. He, too, had noticed the for sale sign in the front yard, and he was aware that in situations where a house is on the market, there'll usually be a real estate lockbox on the front door, one that holds a key to the house. This way, an agent who knows the code can unlock the box, retrieve the key, and show the house to potential buyers when the homeowners aren't there. The front door of this house had no real estate lockbox, and Detective McCord had also noticed a few odd things about the front door knob. It didn't seem to match the front door, but it did match the back door, and there were some scratches on the metal of the doorknob, marks that might be made by a screwdriver during installation. Feeling that something was not right, Detective McCord called the real estate agent whose number was listed on the for sale sign, and she told him that there should in fact be a lockbox on the front door, and she suggested that if they wanted to get in but no one was answering, they should check the vehicles in the driveway to see if any of them contained a garage door opener. Now, it seemed that the guys did not use their garage to park cars in. All the cars were parked in the driveway. The garage was mainly used as a social area. This was where the family would go to smoke cigarettes, drink beer, hang out, and talk. I'm not sure about Tennessee, but here in New York where I live, this is a very Italian thing to do. In fact, they call the garage like the Italian kitchen. One of my aunts, who's not an aunt by blood, but her family came over to the United States with my father's family, so they were very close, and they were the only people that they knew when they first got here. She has an entire kitchen set up in her garage, like sink, oven, stove, 2 refrigerators. They have this like screened in porch so they can sit in there during all weather. They got heaters if it gets cold. I completely get this hanging out in the garage and using it as like a social scene kind of thing, even though I don't do that myself because there are cars in my garage because I'm not trying to wipe snow off my car in the winter. But anyways, the police were able to get the garage door open using a garage door opener found in one of the cars. And upon entering the garage, they found that the smell of chemicals and the feeling of heat was even more pronounced. The officers approached the door in the garage that led directly into the house, and finding it unlocked, they opened it and announced themselves, pulling their weapons to begin the process of clearing the house, which basically means they'll go from room to room, making sure that nobody's in there, everything's okay, and there's no danger present. Now, upon entering the actual house from the garage, the heat and the smell of chemicals became so strong that Deputy Stephen Ballard testified the skin on his face began tingling in reaction to the presence of chemicals. Directly in front of the door they entered through, they could see many items, bottles of what appeared to be chemicals, boxes of what looked like garbage bags. They continued on into an eat-in kitchen area with a table, and on that table they saw a woman's purse, a set of keys, a wrench, some other random things, and 2 wallets, one with Lisa Guy's identification inside and one with Joel Guy Sr.'s identification inside. Continuing on into the kitchen, they noticed a large covered stock pot on the stovetop, and the stovetop underneath it was turned on. Something was simmering inside that pot, but the responding officers had no time to look inside as they continued on with their process of clearing the house. In the dining room, the police officers observed a lot of things, most prominent of which was several guns. And I mean a lot of guns. There was guns on the table. There was guns on the floor in like gun bags, boxes of ammo. There was a lock set with a screwdriver sitting next to it. So For those of you who don't know, a lock set is a doorknob and a lock, and it's a set, and it's meant to be put on a door. Like if you broke up with your crazy ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend and they have a key to your house, you would probably want to go and purchase yourself a lock set to make sure that they no longer do. The police officers continued on into the foyer where they were able to see close up the many bags of groceries sitting on the floor, the ones that they had observed through the front door earlier. And they were also able to see that the house thermostat was set to 90 degrees, which is incredibly high, especially in some place like Tennessee where it doesn't really get super cold. They moved on to the living room where everything appeared to be in order, besides for one strange sort of scene. There was a portable heater plugged in and sitting next to a plugged-in hairdryer. Now, off the living room, there was a small den/office area with a computer and many pictures of a happy family covering the walls, literally covering the walls. There was hardly a portion of the actual wall you could see amongst all the pictures of these happy, smiling people. Now, after this, the officers made their way back into the foyer and proceeded to climb the stairs to the upper level. And that was where things started to go downhill fast. The staircase of this home was set up in two sections. The bottom section would let you out onto a small landing where you would then have to sort of like turn left and proceed up another small set of stairs to reach the upper landing where the bedrooms were located. At the very top of the stairs, there was a white safety gate that blocked the way. Now, the guys didn't have any small children, so this safety gate was most likely for a dog. And as they continued their climb, they could hear the sound of a dog wailing. It breaks my heart. From somewhere in the house. They just didn't really know where, and sadly, that was not their first priority at this point. We assume that most likely this gate was placed there to prevent the dog from going upstairs or from coming downstairs. I have one myself in my house. It's at the bottom of my staircase so that the dogs don't go upstairs, especially when it starts getting colder here and it starts raining. The dogs don't like to go outside when it's wet or cold, so they'll go out, and they've perfected the art of pretending to pee, actually miming the whole process, and then they'll come in and run upstairs and pee on the carpets. So that is why that gate is there, and I assume for the guys, this was the same kind of situation because they did have a dog who was currently locked in the laundry room and had been locked in the laundry room for a few days. Now, on the first landing, before they went up the other set of stairs, the police could see spots of what looked like blood, and these spots grew in size and frequency as they continued upwards. At the top landing, through the slats of the safety gate, they could see a pile of bloody clothes and a pair of scissors, as well as a large dark stain on the carpet and other staining on the carpet and the walls. Once they were on the second floor, the officers split up to begin clearing the upstairs rooms. Deputy Ballard went in the direction of the master bedroom, while Detective McCord headed the other way towards what looked like an exercise room or a spare room that had been used as an exercise room. And through the open door of that room, something could be seen laying on the floor. You can hear in the body cam footage, which I will place in here and also link. At one point, Detective McCord says something like, "Are those hands?" And at this point, the officers decide to withdraw, secure the scene, and call for backup.
Knox County Sheriff's Office! I've got one, probably one down here too, Jim. I'm going right, Benji. What do you mean by got one, sir? And that's where I noticed the hands at the end of the hallway. This room's clear. Hold up. Oh my God. You good, Jeremy? Back out. We got clear. Go. I'm going across. Got you. Clear. This door says where dog is. Dogs. Blood. Hands. Is that people's hands? Yeah, I think so. That's what I think. That's
That's what it looks like.
What's your fucking hand? Get out now.
I ain't cleared. We not cleared this.
There's blood all over it, though. You want to... Can't back out.
Lisa and Joel Guy had been brutally murdered. 61-year-old Joel Guy had been stabbed in his exercise room 42 times, causing damage to his lungs, livers, and kidneys. Some of the stab wounds had gone so deep and had been so violent that his ribs had been scraped and in a few cases severed completely. His hands had been cut off at the wrists and his arms had been severed at the shoulders. His legs had also been removed at his hips and his right foot had been removed. 51-year-old Lisa Guy had been stabbed 31 times, with 9 of her ribs being severed. Her legs had been cut off below the knees, her arms had been removed at the shoulders, and her head had also been violently removed. Lisa Guy's head would later be found inside that covered stock pot in the kitchen, simmering on the stove. So this is obviously a horrific scene. The officers that were on duty and that responded to that residence that day, they testified that they'll never forget the smell, the feeling, what they saw. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, something out of a movie. Most of the body parts, besides Joel's hands and Lisa's head, had been found in the master bathroom, stuffed inside of 2 blue Sterilite bins and covered with large amounts of liquid that appeared to be muriatic acid. Who could have done this, and why? That would be the question the Knox County Sheriff's Office was tasked with answering, and it wouldn't be long until their quest led them to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to the house of Joel and Lisa Guy's only son, 27-year-old Joel Guy Jr. Now, to understand what happened at the end, we have to go back to the beginning, as far back as we can, given that little is known about the early life of Joel Jr., although I'm sure things will start coming out because he actually just went to trial last month, I believed. So I'm sure now that it's been adjudicated, things will start coming out about him. People who knew him or went to school with him will have all sorts of stories. I imagine that there are many stories out there about this man. It seems that Joel Guy Sr. had been married once before he and Lisa tied the knot, and from this marriage, 3 children had been born, all daughters, Angela and Michelle, who were twins, and Shandice. Now, Angela and Michelle, the twins, were just 1 when their parents divorced, and a few years later, when they were 3, their father married Lisa, so she'd pretty much been around all their lives, and they were very close to her. They referred to her as a second mother. Angela and Michelle actually had a group text with their father, Joel Guy Sr., and their stepmother, Lisa Guy, and they spoke at least once a day, if not several times a day. Michelle actually said that she aspired to be the kind of woman her stepmother was. Warm, caring, family-focused, the kind of woman who had a home-cooked meal on the table and who greeted her husband with love when he got home from work.
Lisa's been in my life my entire life, and it said at 3, but she's been my entire memory. And so we would go in the summers. Dad would have us for a month in the summer because they always lived so far away, and Angela and I would go visit for the entire month. But the dynamics of that was my mom was a single mom, so there's struggles with single moms. But when we went to Lisa's house, her cabinets were stocked with food, and she greeted Dad like the perfect Walton family. When they would come home, dinner would be cooked with meat and side dishes, and there would be candy in the shelves. And I just would watch her, and I watched her growing up like she was the mom, or that dream that you have to have a double parent home, to where she loved, like, I so wanted to be this woman that my first engagement ring was her exact engagement ring, and I wanted to be the mom she was. She would sit in her little brown Sperry brown shirt. She had a really high arch in her foot, and just with her cup, I wanted to even, at certain points in my life, I walked around with a cup that had like the little square placement under it. Because I wanted to be her. I wanted to be the mom that she was.
Now, it's not that they didn't have a good relationship with their actual mother, but Michelle does go into detail during her court testimony, saying that there are struggles when you're raised by a single mother. And when she would go and visit her father and her stepmother, it was like a completely different world. You know, they had a loving marriage. They were good to each other. Lisa would have little candy dishes all over the house with candy in it, and she would, just be this sort of doting mother that possibly Michelle's biological mother didn't have the time to be because she was a single mother and probably working very hard to stay afloat. So Michelle's sister and twin, Angela, didn't live in Tennessee. She'd actually moved to upstate New York in 2017 to pursue a job that her father had inspired her to take. Joel Guy Sr. was a piping designer. I think they described him as a piping architect. So he would design pipe systems, and she would remember him bringing home blueprints and designs from work when she was a child, and she loved looking at them and watching him study them. So she began a career in a similar field. She knew that her father and Lisa were madly in love. And they had been excited when they'd finally decided to retire, sell their house, and move back to Joel's hometown. Angela talked to her father at least once a day, and she had planned to come home for Thanksgiving, but at the last minute, plans had changed. And Angela opted instead to spend an entire week with her family at Christmas instead of coming home for both Christmas and Thanksgiving. She had been to Knoxville to see her father and Lisa, who she referred to not only as her stepmother, but her best friend, and this had been the previous October. And Angela testified later that it was during this trip she'd first heard from Lisa and from her father that they were planning to cut their only son, Joel Jr., off. Now, it turns out that Joel Guy Jr., although he was a grown-ass man who was perfectly capable of taking care of himself, had never had a paying job. His last 2 years of high school had been completed at a boarding school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and this isn't the kind of boarding school that we hear about in movies where you send your kids away because you don't want to deal with them. This was a prestigious boarding school for gifted students. I think it's called the Louisiana School for Math, Science, and the Arts, and it had been Joel's idea to attend there while the rest of his family moved and lived out of state. It didn't seem as if you could describe Joel Jr. as family-centered. He was socially awkward, and he preferred to be by himself. Even when he was in Tennessee for a holiday or a special occasion, he would spend much of his time alone in his room, not interacting with anyone else. But Joel Jr. lived in an apartment, and he attended Louisiana State University. He drove a car, and somehow he managed to pay to put gas in it and pay for the utilities in his apartment. But he never had a job, so how was he able to afford this lifestyle? His parents had been paying his bills for years, and in an email that was not allowed into trial, Joel's father had told him enough was enough. They'd been paying for his tuition, he'd been attending college for far more than 4 years, and he had not obtained a degree yet, so he would no longer be receiving money from him. Joel's mother, Lisa, was a little more tolerant of her son's inability to pay his own bills, and she actually took a job specifically so that she could continue paying for his tuition, his rent, his car, and his utilities. Many people testified during the trial that Lisa Guy worked specifically so that her son, Joel Jr., did not have to. But all that was changing now. Lisa was planning to retire the following week. Her husband already had retired, and they both agreed that they could no longer afford to provide for their adult son. They told multiple people, including Joel Sr.'s daughters, that once they retired, Joel Jr. would be getting no more money from either of them. It was time he learned to stand on his own 2 feet. Now, they were planning to tell him together when he came home for Christmas, but that plan changed when Joel Jr. surprised everyone, announcing that he would be coming home for Thanksgiving as well. And it's not a callous thing or a mean thing for these people to say, we're retiring. We can't afford to pay for our grown-ass son anymore. When you retire, you have to live by a budget, a very strict budget. It's not like Cristal's being popped on some yacht in Ibiza. You have a very, very strict budget that you have to work with. And they just realized that supporting Joel Jr. was not in that budget. So when Joel Sr.'s daughter, Michelle, showed up to her father's house on the morning of November 23rd, which was Thanksgiving, she was preoccupied. She was trying to wrangle her 3 young sons, and she was carrying in laundry to wash at her parents' house because her dryer was broken. But she did notice as she passed by the car of her stepbrother, Joel Jr., there was a big blue bin in his back seat. And she remembered thinking, why is that blue bin back there? Did he pack his belongings in there? Why wouldn't he use a suitcase or something? Her questions grew as the day went on. She'd spent many holidays with her family before, and it was always the same. She, Lisa, her sisters, Joel Sr. would hang out in the garage, smoking, telling stories, laughing, and having a good time, while her stepbrother remained in his room, cut off and isolated from the rest of the family.
The typical time with Dad and Lisa was more laughing and banter, but if Joel Michael Jr. was there, he wasn't ever hanging with us doing that banter. He would be in his room.
But not this Thanksgiving. From the moment she arrived, Joel Jr. was happy and engaging. He even interacted quite a bit with her 3 sons, which was really odd to her because she didn't think her brother even knew the names of her children. As she went about her business in the morning doing laundry, she noticed how Joel always seemed to be around, watching her. At times, she would turn around and he would be directly behind her without her even knowing how long he'd been standing there.
You kind of just snuck up on me there, ma'am. I fear you're underestimating the sneakiness, sir.
Then Joel began pulling out his old things from his room. Now, even though he didn't live there and he rarely came home, Lisa, his mother, had kept her son's room as if he slept there every night. His old toys and Beanie Babies, his Beanie Baby collection were there, and this was what he was proceeding to go through and give away to Michelle's son, which was very uncharacteristic of him, not only to just give away his prized possessions, his Beanie Baby collection, but to just interact with people. He tried to avoid it as much as possible. At some point, the family gathering, moved to the back porch where Michelle took a picture of the family. This picture shows Joel and Lisa Guy smiling happily in each other's arms. Michelle's 3 sons are in the picture as well, and then Joel Guy Jr. smiling widely and standing next to his mother. Michelle also testified that the previous month she had been with her father and Lisa when they had both told her they were no longer going to be able to be giving Joel Jr. money. And on Thanksgiving, Michelle sensed some tension inside the house. And she and her father went outside and they were having a cigarette, at which point Joel Sr. told her that the tension was due to the fact that Lisa had already informed Joel Jr. earlier that month that as much as she wanted to continue helping him monetarily, they really had to be careful with their finances after retirement, and continuing to pay all his bills was just not in the budget. He was going to have to get a job. It appears that sometime during Thanksgiving, this topic had come back up, and that was the cause of the tension inside the house that Michelle was feeling. Now, Michelle left around 8 p.m. that evening, not knowing it was the last time she would see her father, Joel Sr., or the stepmother, Lisa Guy, that she had admired so much. The next day, Joel Sr. and Joel Jr. drove to Sigornsville to drive the family boat there because the family boat was being stored in the garage of the Knoxville home and they wanted to drop it off at the new Sigornsville house. They had already sold the Knoxville house and they had to be out by December 13th, so that Thanksgiving was their last holiday in the Knoxville house, and they were all planning to have Christmas together in the Sigornsville house, and they'd already started packing and bringing things to the new house. Joel Sr. had purchased this house from his sister Robin, who'd become the trustee of their father's estate after his death. Both of Joel's sisters, Robin and another woman named Renee, lived in Sigornsville and had been helping their brother clean the house and get it ready to be lived in. Renee had spoken to Joel Sr. earlier on the morning of Friday, November 25th, and he told her they were headed there with the boat and they planned to leave to return to Knoxville by 3:30 p.m. so they could be back home in time for dinner. His other sister, Robin, had planned to meet Joel at the Sigornsville house that day, but when she called him around 1 p.m. to see how much longer he would be there, Joel Sr. told her they were getting ready to head back and he would just see her on Monday when he came back to move some more things in. Now, we don't know what took place on this Friday. With 3 hours in the car between the drive to Sigornsville and the return trip to Knoxville, we can only assume Joel Jr. and his father had a lot of time alone to talk, and maybe Joel Sr. made it clear to his son that they would not be changing their minds. But I suspect Joel Jr. already knew this because he had a plan in place even before he arrived in Knoxville that Thanksgiving weekend. Joel Sr.'s oldest daughter, Shandice, would normally speak to her father every weekend, but this weekend she didn't hear from him at all, which would have ordinarily been odd, but it was made even more odd by the fact that it was her birthday on Sunday, November 27th, and her father always called her on her birthday. This was the first one he had missed in her whole life. Michelle, too, had tried to get a hold of her father that weekend but was unable to. She had texted him to ask for the picture that she'd taken on Thanksgiving of Joel Sr. and Joel Jr. and Lisa and her 3 sons. She wanted to post it on Facebook, but he never responded to her. On Sunday, Michelle was feeling sick, but on Monday morning, on her way to work, she texted her sister to see, why Joel and Lisa weren't answering texts. Like, are they upset with me? Did I do something wrong? All my calls are going to voicemail. My texts are going unanswered. The sisters were concerned that something was actually going on, that something was actually wrong. So Michelle, who worked as a teacher, promised to head over there after work since she was the only local sibling and check on them. But she never got the chance because as she was driving into work, Jennifer Whitehead was on the phone with 911, requesting the police to do a welfare check on Lisa Guy. Halfway through her workday, Michelle was called by Detective Jeremy McCord, and she met with him in the parking lot of a Harley-Davidson store. He told her that bodies had been found in her father's house, but they were unable to identify them yet, and he asked her who had been with her parents that weekend. That's when she gave them the name of her stepbrother, Joel Guy Jr., and authorities began tracking him down and building their case. Now, we already talked a bit about what was found in that house, the scene of a horrific double murder, but there were other things found as well, things that made it crystal clear who the murderer was and why he had done this. In the master bedroom on the neatly made bed lay a roll of plastic sheeting. There was another portable heater there, turned all the way up. There was a blender on the floor and some tools, along with a yellow Post-it note with some numbers and figures written on it, followed by the words, "Hold my dead ashes and sprinkle us both after you pass at Buzzard's Roost. Tell all my children I love them, and as you should know, I love you truly. I have had a blast." And it's signed Joel M. Guy, who was Joel Michael Guy, who was Joel Guy Sr. In the master bathroom, there was plastic sheeting all over the floor, and placed on that plastic were 2 large blue totes, where the bodies of Joel and Lisa Guy were found. The shower head in the shower had been removed, and in its place there was a long garden hose. There was another portable heater blasting hot air in the bathroom, as well as a knife and some blue latex gloves. In the spare room at the end of the hall that was used as an exercise room, there was a copious amount of blood soaked into the carpet and splattered on the walls, seemingly concentrated into one back corner of the room. There was a Bowflex exercise machine that had been turned upside down, possibly due to a struggle, and there was also this pull-out bed. It was like a twin bed, and it had blood on it, as well as stab marks in its cushions. There was a pile of bloody clothes, Joel Sr.'s clothes, topped with a pack of cigarettes that also had blood on them. In the guest bedroom, there was a suitcase with clothes, 2 blue covers that corresponded with the blue totes found in the master bathroom, a laptop with an external hard drive still plugged in on the bed, and a red book bag. Now, this was the room Joel Guy Jr. would sleep in whenever he came to visit. The bookshelf was crammed with books that showed titles such as Biology, Psychology and Life, Abnormal Psychology, and Macroeconomics. The upstairs thermostat read 95 degrees because heat rises. It's always going to be hotter upstairs than it is downstairs. Now, the hall bathroom was covered in blood, along with a pile of clothes that had blood on them, and a Walmart bag on the sink which had a receipt and some cash inside, as well as used and unused medical supplies surrounding it. There were bottles of chemicals all over the house. Bleach, muriatic acid, food-grade hydrogen peroxide. All of this stuff together is confusing, I guess, but their intent and uses, as well as what most likely happened to Joel and Lisa Guy, is made clear by a notebook found in the red backpack on the floor of Joel Jr.'s bedroom. Inside this notebook, there was a few benign things that could have belonged to any student: math homework, a Scantron sheet for test taking, and the fall syllabus for a class called Madness and Medicine, which I admit is less benign and more of a red flag, but let's talk about what was written in the notebook. An entire step-by-step plan that should probably have been titled How to Get Away with Murder When You Think You're an Evil Genius, But You Have Grossly Overestimated Your Intelligence. I'm going to read this plan to you now. Get killing knives. Quiet. Multiple. Get carving knives to make small pieces. Get sledgehammer, crush bones. Bring blender and food grinder, grind meat. Get bleach, denature proteins. Get plastic bin for denaturation process. Does not matter where they are killed, just get rid of bloody spots to prevent evidence of time of death, not the mattress or the couches. Get rid of bodies inside the house, there, and my DNA already there. So what Joel Guy Jr. means by this is his DNA is already going to be there because he was staying there for the weekend, and also Joel Sr. and Lisa Guy's DNA is going to be there because they live there. Open up doggy door to provide entryway. Now he scratches that out and he writes in its place, he needs to be blamed, not intruder. So I think that what he planned to do was open the doggy door so that it looked like maybe somebody else came in and killed them. But then he scratched that out because he really wanted Joel Guy Sr. to be blamed for this murder of Lisa Guy. Next, he writes, flush chunks down toilet, not garbage disposal. Get plastic sheeting for disposal process. Get hollow point bullets just in case. He crosses that out and says, will be seen buying bullets, just use computer room gun. Check to make sure there are bullets, last resort. He is not alive to claim her half of the insurance money, all mine, $500,000. Flood the house, covers forensic evidence, turn heater up as high as it goes, speeds decomposition. Bleach reacts with luminol just like blood, douse area with bleach. Big sprayer, lie, trash compactor. Body gives time of death. And then there's an arrow pointing to alibi. Don't have to get rid of body if there's no forensic evidence on the body. And then written all in caps, his fingerprints and DNA. Minimize things I touch throughout visit. Wear gloves and socks to prevent fingerprints and footprints. Drop something down the garbage disposal to break it. Get him on the ground fixing it. Kill him with a knife. Clean up mess from him before she gets home. Kill her with knife. Kill dog after, and then he crosses that out and writes, leave alive, fingerprints, take dog with you. After this, he writes, place her in shower with dog, and then with dog is crossed out because he's decided to not kill the dog after all. And then he writes, turn on hot water and point at her to get rid of forensics. Remove her clothes and take them with me for disposal. Place him in plastic bin and use it to get him into upstairs bathroom. Cut off his arm and plant his flesh under her fingernails. Place her hand with his DNA so that his DNA is not washed away by the shower. Use sodium hydroxide to destroy his soft tissue and soften bones for transport. Baste once every hour to accelerate. Baste, B-A-S-T-E, not based, but baste, like a turkey. That's what he meant, baste like a turkey. Flush sodium hydroxide down toilet. Wash out bin with handheld shower head and then direct handheld into toilet to flush everything out of pipes and into the public waterway. Douse killing rooms, kitchen with bleach. Place hair curler with flammable paper and flammable containers of gasoline in 4 locations. His killing room, her killing room, his bathroom, her bathroom. Wipe down areas near killing rooms and bathrooms. Turn heaters up to 90 degrees to melt fingerprints and dry everything. Set her phone to send me a text message late Sunday to prove I was in BR, which stands for Baton Rouge, and she was alive, which is in quotations. Leave through the front door and wipe down doorknobs. Timer for flammables set for Friday at 10 a.m. Sunlight masks fire, but not smoke. Everyone's at work, so they can't report it. Ultraviolet light shows fingerprints. Check mail before leaving. To get rid of blood, use peroxide and bleach. And then the word hemoglobin with an arrow pointing to blood, and then the word DNA with an arrow pointing to bleach, which is pretty self-explanatory. His next creation is titled Destruction of Bodies. And then he writes what the human body is composed of: 20% fat, 20% protein, 55% water, and 5% other compounds. Then he writes another list, which is titled Assets. Her life insurance, $500,000, possibly more with a double indemnity. With him missing/dead, I get the whole thing. All her other assets are joint. Go to him if missing, unknown if he is dead. His assets include gets all joint property if missing. When he gets all joint property, also gets joint debt. Knoxville house, homeowner's insurance possibly, but probably worthless after fire. Owe $100,000. Sigornsville house appraised at $400,000 plus, worthless with Renee on property. Her car, his SUV not paid for, his boat, his old truck paid for, his 401k $80,000 possibly less after taxes. He could possibly have savings and or investment accounts. So, based on all of this, it's pretty clear to see what happened. Joel Guy Jr. was living the life of a leech, and he was satisfied with it. He didn't really want anything more. He felt no need to change, to become a contributing member of society, to make his own way in the world. He found out that his parents were going to be retiring and moving away, and they expected him to get a job, which was an absolutely outrageous thing for them to expect, in his opinion. He also knew that his mother, through her job, had a $500,000 life insurance policy, and that he was the beneficiary of half of it. But he didn't want half of it. He wanted the whole thing. All mine. My precious, like he wrote, right? He didn't write my precious, but you know what I mean. So his father, Joel, had to go too. I think he intended, by getting his mother's flesh under the fingernails of his father, to set it up to look like a murder-suicide. He was going to kill them, use all of these chemicals to dissolve their bodies and compromise evidence, and then set the house to go up in flames at a time when he was already long gone and would have an alibi. It's also clear that his plan was no last-minute crime of passion. He had mapped it all out, and he had prepared to carry it out for weeks. On November 7th, 2016, Joel Guy Jr. was seen on surveillance purchasing several supplies at 2 different locations. He first went to Ace Hardware in Louisiana, and he bought a few bottles of food-grade hydrogen peroxide, which were given to him in tied-off bags because this chemical is very dangerous if it comes in contact with human skin, hence the tingling of Deputy Stephen Ballard's face that he'd felt as he walked through the house. He then went to Lowe's and he bought an Irwin pipe wrench, which was later found in the master bedroom and had been used to remove the shower head in the bathroom. He also purchased Clorox wipes, which were also later found at the crime scene. On November 18th, Joel Jr. purchased extension cords and an industrial timer from Home Depot, and that was supposed to play a part in his plan to set the house on fire. Now, both of these items were found at the scene. He left the store and he went back in a few minutes later to buy a commercial bleach sprayer, also discovered at the scene, still in the box. On November 19th, Joel Jr. was caught again on surveillance purchasing a K-bar knife, also found at the scene, from a store called Academy Sports in Baton Rouge. And on November 21st, he was seen on camera again buying a blue Sterilite bin from Walmart. A blender had been found in the master bedroom, and when he was apprehended later, a commercial-grade meat grinder was found in the trunk of Joel Jr.'s car. We will probably never know exactly when he started planning to kill his parents, like when the idea first occurred to him, but we know that he started preparing for it 19 days prior to the murders. But the question that we will probably never have the answer to is not why. I think that's pretty evident, but what went wrong? Something happened to prevent Joel from following his carefully laid out plan. His initial plan had been to break the garbage disposal and then kill his father when Joel Sr. was on the ground trying to fix it. And I personally think that this is when things first went off book. Literally, before he had done anything, his whole plan went to hell. My theory is that Joel Sr. was upstairs, either getting ready to work out or already working out, and his son informed him that the garbage disposal wasn't working. Maybe Joel Sr. was like, okay, and? Like, what do you want me to do about it? You're a grown man, you broke it, so you can fix it. You're gonna have to eventually learn how to do this stuff on your own anyways. What better time to start your self-sufficient education than now? So Joel Jr.'s plan was starting to derail. His mother, Lisa, was out of the house for now, doing grocery shopping at the PetSmart and Walmart in the Turkey Creek Shopping Center, not far from the house. And Joel Jr. needed Joel Sr. to be dead by the time she got back home. At this point, he needed to throw aside all his careful planning and just get the job done. So He went to his father in the exercise room, and as the evidence suggests, there was a struggle. The Bowflex machine in the room was turned over, the futon was stabbed, and Joel Sr.'s hands showed defensive wounds on his palms. Joel Jr. had not anticipated this, and let's be honest, it seems like Joel Jr. is the kind of person who might spend more time carefully writing out his murder plan than going to the gym. Killing 2 people and then disarticulating their bodies in the way he did would have been physically demanding, and I just don't think he expected that. I also don't think he expected his father to be so strong and scrappy. And it is suspected that Joel Sr. fought back, and hard. At one point, it actually seemed that Joel Sr. had gotten his hands on a knife after he had already been stabbed multiple times, and using this knife, he attacked his son with it. After his arrest, Joel Jr.'s own hands were photographed, and they also showed defensive wounds in the form of slash marks on his palms, especially his left palm. Unfortunately, because Joel Sr. was caught unaware at first, his son still had the upper hand, and Joel Sr. did eventually succumb to his wounds, and he died. After this, all Joel Jr. had to do was wait for his mother to come home. Now, Lisa Guy is seen on Walmart surveillance purchasing a number of items on the afternoon of November 26, 2016. These items correspond with the groceries seen by police 2 days later, left on the floor of the foyer. Lisa's also seen on surveillance leaving the Walmart a little after noon and allegedly heading right home. There's no evidence she went anywhere but home after Walmart, and she did have some freezer items like ice cream, so it's not likely that she did make any stops before going home. And she's going home to be attacked and killed by her own son, but she has no idea. When she got home, we suspect she began bringing groceries in, but she never finished. There was still a few bags that were left in her car, so it's thought that when she entered, her son, Joel, lured her upstairs somehow. Maybe he said he was hurt, which he was. Maybe he said her husband, Joel Sr., was hurt, had collapsed, or had a heart attack, so she dropped her bags and ran upstairs, only to be stabbed by her only son as she was face to face with him. He killed his mother on that upstairs landing. He cut off her clothes, just as he said he would in his plan, and he left the clothes and the scissors in a pile where they lay right at the top of that landing, which was the pile of clothes that police could see through that safety gate. Joel's own clothes were also left behind in a bloody pile on the floor of the hall bathroom, and during the trial, I felt so bad because one of the forensics people actually had to remove a pair of Joel Jr.'s underwear from an evidence bag and show them to the court. And I'm sure it was embarrassing for Joel Jr. I don't care if it was. I hope he was completely embarrassed. Although he never showed anything during that trial, right, besides pleasure and some "I'm better than you" sneers. And yes, the forensics lady was wearing gloves, luckily for her, but I don't know if I could have done it, man. Just hold his underwear up and check it out. His underwear were from Banana Republic, no less. The kid doesn't have a pot to piss in that he had bought for himself, but Fruit of the Loom is beneath him. After Lisa Guy was dead, Joel had to attend to his own wounds, so he removed his bloody clothes, left them in a pile on the bathroom floor, and he went to the same Walmart his mother had been to just hours before. Here he bought first aid supplies, medical tape, bandages, and in the surveillance footage, you can see how he's not even really using his left hand because it's so badly injured. He then returns to the house, licks his wounds, and gets down to the business of removing the limbs from his parents' bodies so he can start dissolving them in acid. Also found in his backpack was a user manual for a residential hot water heater, the same one found in the home of his parents. It looks like he was planning to start a fire in that house after he left so that all the evidence of his deeds would be burned and the police and the authorities wouldn't even be able to get an official time of death, so he would have an alibi. Almost directly after killing his parents, Joel used his father's credit card and bank account to start prepaying his bills. He paid ahead for his tuition at LSU. He paid several months up front for his apartment in Baton Rouge. He prepaid his utilities. And during the trial, a man named Michael McCracken testified. Michael had been roommates with Joel Jr. at that boarding school for 2 years, and after graduating, Joel Jr. had actually enrolled at George Washington University, but he was only there for a semester before he dropped out and enrolled at LSU. And he moved into the same apartment complex in Baton Rouge that Michael McCracken was living in while also attending LSU. Now, at some point shortly after Joel returns to Baton Rouge, Mike's roommate moves out and he's moving to Greece. So Joel moves in with his old friend Mike, becoming roommates once more. Altogether, these two men, Joel and Mike, had known each other for a total of 10 years, and Mike felt that he was Joel's only friend. But if you ask me, it seemed like they were a lot closer than just regular friends. But that's just my opinion, which I formed after hearing their phone conversations that took place after Joel was arrested. Now, according to Michael, Joel's family never visited their apartment. They didn't call or write. And the first time Mike found out that his old friend Joel even had sisters was after he got arrested for the murder of his parents. Mike said Joel had always been socially awkward, and after high school, he became even more isolated and withdrawn, preferring to spend most of his time in his room on his computer watching YouTube. Mike testified that there was weeks during which he didn't see Joel at all, even though they lived together. By the time 2016 rolled around, Mike felt that Joel didn't have any actual friends, and even his interactions with Joel were becoming very limited. Now, you may be feeling a little pang of pity for sad Joel Jr. His parents never visited him while he was at college. His own sisters never even called him. No wonder he hated them, right? They had their own little family unit chemistry going, and he was left out of that. But au contraire, that's not how it was at all. When Joel Sr. and Lisa Guy decided to move from Louisiana to Tennessee, they'd wanted Joel to move with them, but it had been his choice to stay behind and attend the boarding school. In fact, his relatives in Louisiana weren't even allowed to know where he was living because he didn't want to interact with his family. He didn't want a relationship with his stepsisters or his aunts in Sigornsville. He preferred his own company, which I totally get. I love hanging out with myself alone. But you can't have it both ways, right? You can't isolate yourself from everyone and use every chance you get to let your family know how little you want to be in their presence and then cry about how no one loves you. Being on his own and not being close to his family, that was Joel Jr.'s idea. His idea of a good time, if you will. Mike also testified that he had met Joel's mother once and she would call her son often, and Mike also knew that the only reason Joel was able to pay his bills was because of the money his mother Lisa gave him. Now, during a jailhouse phone call between Joel and Mike that I think took place on December 10th, 2016, Joel specifically told Mike that he didn't have to worry about the apartment manager throwing his stuff out into the street because he had prepaid several months of rent. And Mike was like, "Whoa, how'd you do that? That's a lot of money." And Joel responded, quote, "Yeah, one of the last things my mother did was pay for that, so," end quote. He also says to Mike, quote, "Consider me dead and move on with your life. I genuinely want you to be happy. I thought we genuinely had a very realistic chance of being happy if I got around to doing that, and well, I've pretty much fucked everything up. I don't really have much of a chance of being happy anymore, but you do. You do. And eventually you're going to meet somebody, and you've claimed I've been an albatross around your neck before, but I certainly would be now. I mean, I'm in freaking prison. On that basis, I think you should just sort of consider me dead and move on with your life. So I'm not going to try and initiate any more contact with you beyond sort of, the practical concerns we discussed earlier, and I may do that with my lawyer because I genuinely want you to be happy. And that's pretty much the end of my outburst, so there you go." End quote. To which Mike McCracken responds, quote, "It hurts my heart. You've been my best friend for my entire adult life, and I don't know if that will ever change because of what you did. I'm not totally surprised. I don't know what to say, just angry and lost and confused and disappointed and upset, and I'm mourning you like you're dead even though I'm talking to you on the phone. It's taking everything I have to process and maintain my sanity." End quote. And Joel responds to Mike, quote, "I mean, I don't know if there is anything to say. I'm in here and there's, basically, tell me I'm a fucking idiot. Tell me, why did I do this? Blah, blah, blah. How could you? I mean, have a stream of consciousness about anything and everything related or not to anything I just said. I just did word vomit at you right now." End quote. Joel also tells Mike that he thinks about Mike all the time, saying, quote, "You were the only good thing in my life. All the crap in that apartment, you're the only thing I'll miss," end quote. So there's really nothing that anyone can say, given the evidence, to make a sane and logical person question whether or not Joel Guy Jr. committed these murders. But his lawyers tried, even though I found their efforts to be almost laughable and painful to watch at times. But at the same time, what did they really have to work with? I mean, the guy has a right to a defense and a trial, but as his lawyer, what do you even say? What do you say? You have to know your client's guilty, and there's literally almost nothing you can say to make him appear any less guilty than he is. Well, Joel's lawyers said that Joel was friendly and happy that Thanksgiving weekend, as could be seen in the picture taken on the front porch with his family. Happy and outgoing people don't plan to commit murders. His lawyer also said that Joel Guy Sr. was stabbed over 40 times, an attack that suggested anger and rage. Happy and outgoing people don't do that. Happy and outgoing people don't have anger and rage. Joel's lawyers also said to the jury, listen, Joel's parents were planning to cut him off at Christmas. This wasn't Christmas. It was Thanksgiving. And you only have hearsay and secondhand accounts to suggest that Joel Jr. knew he was about to lose his financial support. You can't prove he knew. Now, like I said, this is a really poor defense. If a juror was present and conscious, even during half of the 4-day trial, they would have been able to quickly dismiss these claims. Joel was happy and outgoing because he knew, or thought he knew, that his financial problems were about to be over and he wouldn't have to deal with these people anymore. He wouldn't have to pretend that he loved his mother and father. He wouldn't have to pretend that he liked his stepsisters or any of their kids whose names he didn't even know, so that his mother would keep paying his bills. He would have her money, and he would finally cut them off completely, which he already would have done if he didn't depend on his family for money. He didn't wait until Christmas because he knew very well that the main source of the money that would be coming to him was from Lisa's life insurance policy. But that life insurance policy was through her employer, and once she worked her last day in December, that went away. I'm sure Joel Jr. was super happy and outgoing. I'm sure he was reveling in what he was about to do, walking through the steps of his carefully formulated plan as he lay in bed the night before, like a kid on Christmas Eve, while his parents slept in the next room, blissfully unaware that this would be their last night together, sleeping in each other's arms. While they dreamt of embarking on their next chapter together, Joel dreamt about ending their lives. He obviously wouldn't want them to know how truly furious and outraged he was that he was being cut off, because he knew he was going to kill them. So he acted like the nicest guy ever, taking his place for one day and one day only in the big happy family, so that later, when the bodies were found, people were being questioned, everyone would remember how nice Joel was that weekend. He wasn't mad at all. He was getting along with everyone. He was giving toys to his nephews. I honestly think that the reason he was giving his toys away was because he knew he was going to burn that house down, and he didn't want his precious Beanie Babies to be inside when that happened. So he saved his Beanie Babies, kind of put them on a Noah's Ark and sent them off with his nephews whose names he didn't even know. That's just my opinion. Don't come for me, but he cared more about his Beanie Babies than his parents, allegedly. Joel Jr.'s lawyers tried it. Man, they tried it. I have to give them credit, because if I was a lawyer, I probably wouldn't have even taken that case, because there's no way you can win, right? You just can't. But they told the jurors, you can't prove it was Joel buying those chemicals at Ace Hardware, even though this stuff was found at the scene with his fingerprints and DNA all over it. You can't prove that it was his notebook with the murder plan inside. There wasn't even a handwriting comparison done. And the inside of the notebook was never tested for DNA or fingerprints. Only the outside of the notebook was. Once again, a valiant effort on the lawyers' parts, considering how very guilty their client was. But let's examine the evidence. The red backpack was found in Joel's room, along with his suitcase and his clothes and his Banana Republic underwear, along with his laptop and a hard drive. Inside the backpack were several books, such as All Quiet on the Western Front, Politics of Rich and Poor, Profiles in Power, Winston Churchill, and Hollywood Goes to War, How Politics, Profits, and Propaganda Shaped World War II Movies. I actually want to read that. I have to write that down. It sounds like a really interesting book. And these books, which were found in that backpack, the same backpack that this notebook was found in, had Joel Guy's name listed on their inside cover. So I'm pretty sure it was his backpack. It was his syllabus in the actual notebook. No handwriting analysis needed. I mean, not to mention the writing itself. He keeps talking about how the money will be his, all his, my precious. Joel Guy Jr. was the beneficiary of his mother's life insurance policy, along with Joel Guy Sr. But I think it's safe to say that Joel Sr. didn't write these things, all mine. So that leaves only one person. An easy process of elimination. We also know that Joel bought a knife from Academy Sports, and that knife was later found in the bedroom he was occupying, and on that knife was his DNA as well as his mother's DNA. We saw him purchase a blue tote from Walmart, the same blue storage bin his parents' remains would later be soaking in so he could baste them once an hour like some twisted Thanksgiving turkey dinner. He made sure to purchase all of these items outside of his home city of Baton Rouge and from different places at different times with the intention, I believe, of not drawing attention to himself. A weird guy like Joel buying a crap ton of chemicals and knives all at once might make a store clerk do a double take, but him buying them little by little would mean no red flags would be raised. And you might not be able to see exactly what he's purchasing each and every time. But at his parents' house, the scene of the crime, various bags were found with these store names on them. Circumstantial evidence shows that he bought these items, he used cash to avoid leaving a trail, and then he transported them to Knoxville when he traveled to his parents' house for Thanksgiving weekend. Now, in my opinion, money was the motive, but not the only motive. I think Joel Guy Jr. honestly hated these people. There's no other explanation. He resented them. This is just my opinion. But I did watch the entire trial twice, and I watched his stupid face during that trial. He hated his parents. Maybe he was sick of feeling that he was bought and paid for by Lisa and Joel Sr. Maybe he was sick of feeling that without them, he wouldn't be able to survive. Maybe his mom and dad were not shy in reminding him that the only reason he was able to maintain his lifestyle was because they were financing it. His father had already stopped giving him money, and now his mother was following suit. They had exhausted their usefulness to him. Michelle said Joel never wanted to hang out with them when he was home from Baton Rouge. He stayed in his room. He didn't engage. He didn't engage because he didn't want to. He didn't love them. He didn't even like them, in my opinion. And the way he killed them doesn't suggest a desire for money solely. It suggests, as Joel's own lawyer said, anger and rage. Anger that they had held their support over his head. Anger that they were now retracting that support. This was not done only to get their money. It was done to get the foot off his neck that he perceived to be there. His mother was paying for his tuition, his books, his apartment, his utilities, his car, even the gas he put into his car. And instead of being grateful and appreciative that she was able to keep him afloat for as long as she did, he felt entitled to even more for even longer. And entitlement is a very unhealthy and counterproductive sort of emotion to have. No one should ever have that. You are not entitled to anything. You're certainly not entitled for your parents to pay for you when you're a grown-ass man sitting in your room for weeks at a time watching YouTube videos. And the funny thing is, I do think Joel Jr. is an intelligent person. I do think he had potential and he could have done something productive. Allegedly, he wanted to become a plastic surgeon, and if he had achieved that, he would have made a good living for himself, and it wouldn't have mattered how introverted and condescending he was to people as long as he brought that good Botox with him and he nipped and tucked in all the right places. I think it actually would have been a perfect profession for him. But it seems he had some sort of Van Wilder Peter Pan syndrome. He'd been attending classes at LSU for a long time, yet he had no degree to show for it. It's like he just wanted to stay in college forever, going to classes by day and watching YouTube videos by night. The eternal college student, free from adult responsibilities and pesky activities such as getting a job and paying your own bills. Joel Jr. made a lot of bank transactions almost as soon as he had murdered his parents. Like I said, he paid his tuition in advance, his utilities in advance, his rent in advance, which he told Mike from prison. Why would he be so quick to pay everything in advance, like right after the murders? Because it takes a while for an estate to be settled. There's going to be an investigation and a process before an insurance company pays out on a policy, especially in this situation where there's like murders and a fire and really no evidence. Joel Jr. needed a cushion. God forbid he go and work at like Burger King for 3 months to keep himself afloat until this life insurance money comes in. He didn't want to get a job, not even in the short term, and he needed to make sure he still had a place to live, electricity and internet, and his school bills paid so that he could just get through the transition period between the murders and the payout. He'd planned everything out. He'd thought of everything. But he hadn't put enough thought into the act itself, the act of murder itself, and how physically demanding it was, in my opinion. And honestly, at this point, I'm giving opinions on what was going on in his mind, and I have no idea. But based on the evidence and based on the little that we know of him, this is the way I feel he was thinking. And my dream would be to interview this man and have him tell me exactly what his plan was, exactly why he didn't follow through with it, and exactly what the hell he was thinking. It would be incredibly interesting to me to know that, and very illuminating. But I personally think, like I said, he didn't take into account how physically demanding it would be to commit murders and then de-articulate bodies. He most likely got tired. He was injured, something else he hadn't factored in. Why didn't he follow his plan? Why didn't he bring the family dog with him? Instead, he locked the dog in the laundry room. He didn't bring the bodies with them. He left them in those bins in the middle of a chaotic crime scene. He didn't spray bleach everywhere. He didn't really clean up anything. Maybe he was planning on coming back to finish the job. Who knows? But in my personal opinion, I think he just gave up and thought, well, the fire is going to destroy everything. This is too much work, and we all know Joel did not like to work. This man murdered his own mother while he was face to face with her. It still just blows my mind how anyone could do that. After all she'd done for him, especially. This was the son she'd probably spent the majority of her relationship with her husband defending. I imagine it may have even caused some tension in their otherwise happy marriage. For a long time, it was important for Lisa Guy to keep giving Joel Jr. money to the point where she got a job specifically and solely for that purpose. And when her husband, Joel Sr., refused to give their son any more money, she continued because she loved him. She loved him and she wanted him to feel loved. But since he was an emotional infant, I think that this was the only way she felt he would know she actually did love him. Now, Joel Guy Jr. was found guilty of these crimes after roughly only 3 hours of deliberation, but Joel was not ready to relinquish control just yet. According to Knox News, 2 days before jury selection, Joel Jr. filed a motion to serve as his own lawyer, but only with the sole purpose of trying to force the prosecution to charge him with the death penalty should he be found guilty. His defense team had refused to file that petition since the prosecution was not seeking the death penalty and they had no plans to. Now, the judge allowed him to file this motion on his own, which was subsequently denied, after which the judge told Joel Jr., quote, "There's nothing I can do to assist you in having them pursue it. You've done all you can to open the door for the state. I can't force them to do it, and neither can you," end quote. Now, some might feel that Joel Jr. was wanting to give his life for what he'd done, and that's a sign that maybe he does have a soul after all. Maybe he was feeling regret. Maybe he couldn't imagine living with what he had done for the rest of his life. And I would disagree, respectfully, with these people, because I know you want to see the best in everyone, and I get that. But, yeah, there's nothing to see here. Keep on moving. There's nothing to see here. I believe that this ploy, along with almost everything else he did, was calculated. Joel Jr. was smart enough to realize that it's much harder for a jury to find someone guilty when the death penalty is on the table, because he only wanted to throw himself down at the feet of the turning wheels of justice if he was found guilty. So he clearly didn't feel he was going to lose too much sleep over it if he was out and sleeping in his own bed. This was just another effort to manipulate the situation to work to his benefit, but the state didn't cooperate. And as far as I know, there's been no psychological evaluation done on Joel Guy Jr. He didn't pursue a mental health defense, although I think he could have. His lawyers never brought up any mental issues during the trial, but I think we can all safely say this man's not right. And it's very possible he does have some psychopathic tendencies. Now, I'm not a medical professional and I don't claim to be one. And also, I would like to remind you that a person can fall on the psychopath spectrum and never hurt another person in their lives. But if you're an entitled brat who thinks they're smarter than everyone else and you have some psychopathic tendencies, it's just not a good combination. Psychopaths lack empathy. Check, right? During the whole trial, even during the gruesome descriptions of how his parents were found, he seemed unaffected, smirking and laughing with his lawyers at times in a very Casey Anthony-esque way. Superficial charm, check. Joel didn't turn it on for just anyone, but when he stood to gain something from being happy and outgoing, we know that he could do it. He probably thought when he put on his normal person mask, the people around him couldn't tell it was a mask, but it was so rare for him to be nice or even talk to anyone that his abrupt change in behavior did more to make him look guilty than anything else. Psychopaths are also narcissistic. They have a sense of self-importance. They have huge egos. Check, 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 all wrapped up in Banana Republic tighty-whities. Psychopaths are also compulsive liars, and to be fair, I don't know enough about Joel Jr. to know if he lied to people often, but I do know enough about him to know that I wouldn't put it past him. Psychopaths are also highly intelligent, and I think it's clear to see Joel was. However, I think he let his large ego undermine his intelligence when he began feeling he was smarter than everyone else, which, considering the position he's in now, clearly is not true. Psychopaths are unable to form emotionally meaningful relationships. I mean, do I even have to qualify this with examples? His own roommate wouldn't see him for weeks because he shut himself in his room. He didn't want his own family to know where he lived because, God forbid, they should visit. Psychopaths feel no remorse, no guilt, no regret. Now, there's no evidence that Joel Guy Jr. ever felt a sliver of remorse for what he had done, although he was probably kicking himself for not getting away with it. So although he has never been officially diagnosed with anything, Joel Guy Jr. was not normal. Something was missing or broken inside of him, and you can't convince me otherwise. But the most ironic part about this whole situation, after doing all of this to make sure he could remain an unemployed leech, Joel Guy Jr. is spending his life in prison, where he doesn't really even have to pay his bills, right? Where he has 3 square meals handed to him every day, and where he can lock himself away from the rest of the world in his prison cell. Thinking about it, though, I hate to break it to you, Joel Jr., but they're probably going to make you get a job. So maybe Joel Jr. got exactly what he wanted. Maybe, but I do know he got exactly what he deserved. That's going to be it for today's video. Let me know what you think about this case. I watched the whole trial twice. I was just enraptured by it, and there was a lot of information and a lot of evidence, and I just really wanted to know everything about it. It's so hard to imagine how somebody could do this to their parents. Like I said, I don't think money was the only factor here, because the way he killed them, he didn't need to do that. The amount of times he stabbed them, the pressure and violence he asserted when he did it, the fact that he had to go through quite a bit. I won't go into any gory details, but he had to go through quite a bit to remove his mother's head from her body and then put it into a stock pot. This was not necessary. This showed that it was personal, and it was beyond money, and it was beyond business. But I just feel sad because Joel Guy Sr. and Lisa Guy, they'd been, so hardworking. They worked hard at their jobs so they could make money, so they could provide for their family. They raised their kids, all of them. Remember that office den area off the living room with the pictures of the family all over the walls? There was pictures of Joel all over those walls. All over those walls. In fact, I would safely say that maybe half of them were of Joel and the rest were of everyone else. His mother didn't want him to feel excluded, even though he did his damnedest to exclude himself. She wanted to let him know, okay, you go over there and you need your time and you prefer your own company, but if you ever need us or if you ever want to come into the fold, we're here for you. She did her best to let him know that. And he just didn't care. So it's very sad that these two people, who were clearly amazing people, amazing parents, had an amazing marriage, didn't get to live out that final chapter of their life, which they had earned and they deserved. And their selfish asshole of a son took it from them. For what reason? He's sitting in prison now. He's just hurt everybody, and he got nothing in return for it besides a bad reputation. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget to check out Scentbird in the description box to get 30% off your first order. It was so nice to have another coffee and crime time. I really like these. It's more casual and we can just kind of chat. But let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Make sure you're still subscribed if you've already been subscribed, because YouTube unsubscribes people from my channel. And also like the video if you liked it, share it if you thought it was worth sharing, and follow me on social media. My handles are in the description box. It's Steph_Harlowe on Twitter and just Stephanie Harlowe on Instagram. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I will see you very, very soon. Stay kind and stay beautiful. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down, and that river runs deep. The mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. Oh, these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name. Better say I have Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings.